Hello and welcome back. My name is Marta and I'm coming to you on day 2 of the Squash That series readathon. If you don't know it, it's hosted by Bailey from Is Bailey Reading, and it's a readathon all about reading sequels and finishing your series. Every time the readathon is made up of a different minigame, and this time around it's a choose your own adventure. It started yesterday, as I said, and the first prompt was the same for everyone, and it was to finish a series. No matter if you want to just read one book and complete it that way, or if you want to read several. And I had a couple options to choose from. One of them was a super short novella, but I ended up going for the series that's been the longest on my TBR, because that felt like the accomplishment would be nice. And I picked up Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, which is the sequel to Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. The sequel came out many years after the first book was published, and so I wasn't really expecting a sequel. I didn't know that that was a series. I think nobody knew until the second one was announced, and I am not sure why it's taking me so long to pick up this sequel. It came out in 2021 and I had read the book a few years previous, and then I reread it because the sequel was coming out, and I think since then I've reread it a second time. But I don't know if it's because the sequel is like quite a bit longer, or just simply because I felt like maybe it didn't need one. I was able to access the audiobook, so I started it that way, and I am about 25% through. It is very reminiscent of the first one. It actually picks up exactly where book 1 finished, and I'm having a nice time so far. It was really easy to dive back into, no pun intended, dive back into the sequel, and so it feels kind of foolish to have waited this long, but I'm reading it now. This is a 10-day round of the readathon, and I'm not a speed reader, so I don't know how many books I'm gonna get through, but I think any progress I get in my series is worth it. And also I'm just really excited to find out what the new prompts are going to be. You get a choice between 2 videos at the end of each one. Even though before the readathon started I was like nervous that I couldn't pick my TBR and I wanted to decide what books I was going to read, now that I'm in it, it's actually really fun knowing that I have a prompt, but I'm prevented from overthinking it because I don't know what the prompt is going to be yet. That's great.
My mother arrived from Tucson about an hour after we'd gotten back home. She looked at me. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "Yes," I said.
I spent most of Sunday horizontal, to be honest, but it was fun because Bailey had about the same amount of time of reading left in her book, and so on sprints we were like checking in and seeing who was ahead at the end of each reading sprint, and that kind of kept me motivated to keep reading throughout the day. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. It is, of course, quite similar to the first book, which I double checked and I read for the last time, let's say 4 years ago, which is when this book came out. So I reread the first one in preparation and then, never actually read the second one. And I was quite keen for a bit of young adult literature at the moment, but I find it hard these days whenever I have some sort of critique about a young adult book, how much of that critique is valid and how much is due to the fact that I'm not the target audience for the book, and so maybe I shouldn't be judging it as harshly, or maybe the target audience for the book wouldn't be generally having the same problems I do. But then at the same time, I find that tricky because you never want to assume that a younger audience is dumb and that they won't be able to understand. For example, one of the problems I'm having with it is the repetition of the same structures over and over, and I don't think that's something that a younger person would like better necessarily. I think that's always a bit of an issue because it feels clunky, and for instance, something that they keep repeating is the structure, that thing that is, that thing that was love, that thing that was whatever, and then the main character is talking about themselves as a couple in the third person kind of bugs me. So them saying Arian Dante this, Arian Dante that. And I think part of the change in this book is that the world kind of opens up for the main character, versus in the first one it's very like insular and it's very much just about his mom and dad and his relationship with Dante. Here we have more friends, we have more teachers who develop more of a personality, which means that inevitably there is more dialogue. And the writing in this book is very lyrical and beautiful, and there's a lot of musings about life and love and your place in the world. But when we're opening up the space for more dialogue, the dialogue continues in that tone, and so it doesn't feel the most realistic, especially when it's the case with like every single character in the book, that they all have this like heightened way of speaking. And I think in the first book, even though that was still the case, it was a lot of these two boys falling in love and figuring out themselves, and so this heightened language just felt like it was expressing their like state of like heightened emotion. But right now it just feels like a bit much. I'm really yapping about this. Maybe I should have collected my thoughts a bit better before I told you about them. But I'm overall enjoying it. I enjoy the conversations that this book is having about love and relationships, about being queer and finding your place in the world, which is very much something that was already in the first one, and I really appreciate it. And just having this young man like coming into himself and figuring out like how to be in the world, that is really nice. I think it is quite obvious with the things that it's trying to say and the topics it's trying to tackle, but I don't necessarily have a problem with that. So anyway, I have like about a half hour left of listening. I think I'm gonna do that while I prep some stuff for lunch, and I wanna make the dough for this like overnight focaccia recipe that my friend sent me ages ago and I still have never made. So I'm really excited about that. So hopefully I can show you if it turns out, well. But yeah, I'll finish listening and then I can see the end of the video and see the new prompts picking a book. So I updated you yesterday, but it already feels like so much has happened and I need to update you again before I have too much to say. I finished Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, and as you probably have gathered, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one, but it was still a good book and I'm glad I read it finally. It made me finish the oldest series on my TBR, which is kind of crazy. I had read the first one originally in 2017. I don't know if I said that before. And these books, both of them kind of together, feel like the ultimate coming of age queer story. And the first book has the characters more like coming together and getting to know each other. And this second one really kind of opens up the world and adds more complexity and more character relationships. And I think that worked really well as kind of a natural progression and to make things more nuanced and layered and more topics explored. I think at some points, as I have said before, I don't know that the writing really worked as well for me. I don't know how much of that is the audiobook, but anyway, I finished that. And then the way to choose prompt 2 was if you had liked the last book in the series more or less than the first one or like the ones before. And so having liked it less, I moved on to the next prompt, which was Amanda's. I think her channel is Amanda's Reading and Writing Life. And I got the prompt to start a series, which I was not expecting to encounter. I thought it would be in the readathon, but I wasn't expecting to encounter that so soon. And I wanted to pick something from my shelves or something I own. And I had a couple different options. I had 2 older ebooks that I've like had for a while, which were Jade City and the Atlas 6. and then two newer ones that I was actually just more excited about. And I ended up going with that because I felt like I had done my duty reading like an older series with the first book. And I ended up going with The Black Tides of Heaven by Neon Young. And this was the perfect pick. My other option was Dream On Ramona Riley, which is by Ashley Herring Blake. But because Arisol and Dante already had some romance, I decided to change genres and go for a fantasy. And I am so into this book. It's not very long. That was also part of the reason why I wanted to go for it. There's like 240 pages and I'm already 140 in. And I'm just so glad I picked this. This is about these two siblings who are the children of the Protector, which is like the head of this empire. And it has a really cool magic system, which kind of reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I've been wanting to rewatch recently, so I feel like that's just coming at the right time. And then I feel like it's just a really cool like sibling story, which I'm always keen to read. Sorry if my chair is really squeaky. And I'm interested in how the world works, and I feel like I'm being given enough of the words and it's like a kind of element-based magic system. And then we've these two children who are given to the monastery when they're really young, because the Protector, their mother, essentially like promised a child to the head abbot, so the head of the monastery, in exchange for a favor. And I'm just really liking it. I mean, you can probably tell. Also, it's unfortunate because I only got this book a couple of months ago. I got it secondhand, and I've just recently learned that it is now published as like a bind up of the 4 novellas. But the covers are so beautiful. I kind of want to just have the 4 of them, but that's like more money on having 4 books instead of 1. But now I have the first one already, so I would have to rebuy the first one essentially in the bundle. So I haven't decided that yet, but I have a feeling I'm going to want to continue this. And also, as this readathon is inspiring us to pick up sequels and read our series, just have to stop letting so much time go by in between like picking up one book and the next. But yeah, really happy. So I wanted to update before, things got out of hand and I had to sit here for ages. I also wanted to let you know how many series I'm in the middle of, which to me seems like a reasonable number. It's 16, then it went down to 15 because I finished the series, and now up to 16 because I've started another one. And then I have one series that I'm caught up with or up to date with, but that's just a book that I read and no sequels have come out yet, but still kind of doesn't count for currently reading. Good morning. I finished The Black Tides of Heaven last night and I really enjoyed it. I had picked it up on a whim recently and it turned out to be a good whim. I think the author, it was my first book by them, and I've really enjoyed the writing style. It is a very fast-paced book. It moves through 3 decades with like several time jumps, and it's trying to teach you about this magic system, the complex politics of this realm, and this sibling relationship that's at the center of it. And I think it balances out all of those avenues really nicely. I think the writing is a little poetic without using like too much metaphor and kind of becoming heavy in that way, which I don't think how well that would suit a short book that spans that much time. But a lot of the metaphor that is there is very tied to the senses. I feel like it would always use something that immediately captured how that moment would feel, and that really worked well for me. The sibling relationship at the center of it was complex, and I was rooting for them, and they would come together and then part ways, and it was just really good. I think the ending, it did have a ramping up of the action and then it tied up kind of the way the first season of a TV show ties up, where it has enough time to like really ramp up, but then it doesn't end up here, it ends kind of a bit down here. And I kind of wish it had pointed a bit more clearly to where the next book might go. I feel like I wish it had left me with a bit more clear direction, so I would be anticipating that next step that much more. But it was still really good. Then I looked at the next prompt, and it was depending on whether you had eaten anything while reading or not. And it threw me for a loop. Is that the expression? It threw me for a loop, because I couldn't remember if I had been snacking while reading or not. Because I usually don't eat while I'm reading a physical book, but I had a snack around the time I was reading. So I don't know if they happen exactly simultaneously, but it was really close. So I went back and forth for a bit, but I decided to go with the prompt if you had eaten something. And that brought me to Cheyenne, and her prompt was to read a 5-star prediction. And that really made me content with the fact that basically every series I'm in the middle of, I don't necessarily see as a 5-star series. And I think it's because I didn't rate my books for a long while, and this year I went back to rating, but I am so stingy with my 5 stars. I just don't give them out often. I feel like a confluence of things really need to come together for me to want to give something 5 stars. A lot of it is the emotional, but I also need to think that book is like beautifully crafted, and the language, and maybe I'm asking for too much, but it's happened before, so I know I'm not asking for the impossible. And I just realized a lot of the series I'm reading, I think that's also why I read them not all at once, because they're not books that I necessarily rate super high, but I find them entertaining, and it's like comforting to be in the world. So the options I was thinking about, one was the next book in the Napolitan Quartet by Elena Ferrante, because I've generally really enjoyed the 2 previous books in this series. Another was the next book in the Wayward Children, because I've also generally really enjoyed that series. I just prefer not to predict 5 stars, because I think that puts a pressure, for me personally, I'm putting like extra pressure on the book to deliver, and that makes it that much more likely that it's just not going to happen. So what I've decided to go for, it's a bit rogue, but I think I'm going to finish the Tea Dragon graphic novel series. I think rather than picking a novel and putting all that expectation in it, a short, sweet, cozy graphic novel that's generally aimed at children, but I don't mind, I think that might just hit that sweet spot. And also bonus, it would allow me to read that today and then pick a new book for the last 3 days of the readathon, which I'm also keen. And so that's what I'm going to do. I need to go off to the library to pick that up. And so I'm going to do that and then keep going. Also, I'd forgotten, but I said I would show you the results of my focaccia attempt, so I'm gonna insert them here. It was my first ever one, and there were some mistakes that happened, but in the end, turned out okay. It is tasty enough, and it doesn't look the prettiest, but it's fine. And I also made some granola that turned out really well. So that's great. Squish, that series has finished, and I need to take you through what's happened in the last couple days. So as I said, I went and picked up the Tea Dragon Tapestry, and I read that, and it was such a good choice. I think it would have just been too much to expect 5 stars from a novel, but this was just a lot more low-key, and I loved it. I really enjoy Kay O'Neill's writing style, the colour palettes that they use, and the way the colour palette transitions through the seasons. It was just so beautiful, and the topics that are explored in this series, and especially in this last volume of found family and just figuring out what you want to do with your life and existing within the world and with others. It was just so lovely that I did give it 5 stars. I read it on Thursday and then through Friday a little bit, and I don't know what the graphic novel could have done better, so I just decided to give it 5 stars. So then the next 2 paths were if you'd given the book 5 stars or 4 or less, and so I went through the 5-star route, and I found Amy from A Star Reads, and her prompt was to read a seasonal book, and that kind of sent me through a bit of a rabbit hole, because I kind of whittled out my options based on what books I had available to me at the time, and I ended up with 2 options. One of them was Back in a Spell by Lana Harper, which is part of the Witches of Thistle Grove series, which is a romance companion series in this small witchy cozy town of Thistle Grove, and every book is a different couple. The other option was the next book in the Miss Marple series, which was The Moving Finger, which I didn't know that it was like particularly autumnal, but a cozy classic, not cozy, but a classic mystery small town vibe. It just felt like it fit the autumn. So I tried the first chapter of the romance because I was feeling like reading some of that genre, but I just didn't really get on with the writing at the time. I've read 2 books in the series already, and it hasn't been a problem before, but I don't know, it just didn't suit my mood, I don't think. So I started the Agatha Christie, which I had gotten the translation into Spanish from the library. And so then I thought, oh, maybe I'll try the audiobook, but I had the English audiobook. Anyway, turns out they're so different. Like the start had been rearranged, and then some passages and some dialogue was completely omitted in the translation. So then it felt really strange to read the translation because I felt like I was reading a completely different book. So I went into research mode a little bit, and it turns out that when Agatha Christie started being translated into Spanish during the 40s, the foreign language that people knew the most in Spain was French, and so we got indirect translations through French. And so the books are like not very accurate and are quite a bit different from the English original. And I reckon from the 40s till now, there's been some updates, but I don't think she's gotten fully new translations from the English. So I ended up accessing the ebook in English and just reading that because it felt like otherwise I was getting something that was too far from the original. And if I hadn't known, it would have been fine. But knowingly, I felt like I couldn't make that choice. So I read The Moving Finger. That brings me to yesterday, which was the last day of the readathon. When I woke up, my Kindle said I had 3 hours left of reading, which I'm pretty sure that's not accurate, but it helped me to stay motivated through the day as I saw the number like slowly go down. And I ended up finishing it. And that was my 4th book that I completed. So I wanted to check what my 5th book would have been, because I'm pretty sure I would have finished the readathon or like completed the path through the like adventure doors. And so I wanted to know what the next book So I wanted to know what the next book would have been. So I'm gonna have a look at that now. I don't think I'm gonna continue with another series just because there's so many other books that I'm keen to read at the moment. But let's just check.
And now I'm gonna make you choose between the seasons. So you're gonna have to make some tough decisions here. Do you prefer the dark half of the year, the mysterious, the cooler, the more holiday forward seasons? If you do, you're going to click the link for fall and winter. If instead you prefer a lighter, sunnier, more flowers and more outdoor activities time of the year, you're going to instead pick spring and summer. That's going to be on this side. So good luck. I hope the next book you end up reading is great, and good luck on your adventure.
Hello, Squash Set Seriesers. You have made it to the final prompt of this round, and you got here by preferring fall and winter. So welcome to your glory time of the year, if you're in the northern hemisphere like I am. But for this final prompt of the readathon, I want you to read the most popular sequel on your list. What that means to me is that it has the most amount of ratings.
As you have seen, my next prompt and last would have been to read the most popular sequel on my list, and I just compiled them in a tag on Goodreads, even though I mostly use the Storygraph at the moment, so I could check what it would be. I'm going to show you my options without the amount of ratings, so you can have a guess. I'm pretty sure I know what it would be, and I definitely don't think I'm going to read that right now, but have a look. I did check, and no points for guessing that my next book would have been The Two Towers by Tolkien. I don't have that book available to me right now, and it's also such a long book. I'm really intimidated by continuing the series, especially because I read the first book as an audiobook. So yeah, that book has over 1,000 ratings, and I was so surprised to see that the second most popular is the Holly Jackson with 750,000 ratings, which just feels kind of wild that that's the difference. But yeah, that would have been it, but it's just not going to happen at the moment. I wanted to do a little recap here at the end and also review the last book I read. I read Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World for the prompt to finish a series, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I read Black Tides of Heaven for the prompt to start a series, and I gave it 4.25 stars. Then I read The Tea Dragon Tapestry for the prompt to read a 5-star prediction, and I did give it 5 stars. Finally, I read The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie for the prompt to read a seasonal book, and I liked it. I'm giving it 3 stars. My main issue with it is that it was a fine mystery. It's this small town setup where the newcomers, and then they're getting to know everyone, and there's the issue of there's anonymous letters, and then there's also a death. So they're investigating that. There's a couple different people that come in, try and help. And yeah, it was a grand mystery. It was somewhat enjoyable, but also it does have certain things, especially the class related talk, that I just don't love, which makes sense for like Agatha Christie's upbringing and the time that it was written. But I don't know that I'm getting anything out of these books that I couldn't get out of a more modern mystery that wouldn't have these issues. I initially started the series a couple of years ago now because I wanted to read some Agatha Christie because I never had before, and I thought it might be fun to read the Miss Marple novels. But in this one, Miss Marple doesn't come in until like 70% through the book, so it's not even like she's a main character, and the main enjoyment that I could get out of this is like her personality and following her specifically. So I think if it's just to read Agatha Christie because she's such a well-known author in the genre and reading these classic mysteries, I think I might just read a couple more of the well-known ones because I'm curious about them. But I am thinking about just DNFing the series because they're fine, but I don't think I'm invested enough to keep reading them just because they're Agatha Christie and because of Miss Marple when she's not even in it for that much of the books. So if you've read Agatha Christie, let me know if you have like the most reads that I should go for instead of this. I don't think I want to tackle like the series of Poirot because I think that's again like too much. But yeah, just any of the, I mean, I know which ones the more well-known ones are, but like if you have any that you especially enjoyed, I'd love to know that. And that's everything from me. Thanks for following my Squash That Series week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.